Hi, everybody. It's Andrea Ankrum with Indivisible Northern Kentucky District 4, and welcome to a special episode of our Coffee Klatch Conversation with Candidates. This is a part of a series where we're interviewing the candidates who are running in the primary race for the Congressional House seat. And so this is a question and answer forum, and we have topics already developed, which we're going to post on our site right now. And if you're watching live, if you have questions concerning these topics, please send them to us, and we will try to work them in as we get to these topics. If you have a question that's not under one of these topics, we should have some time at the end for miscellaneous questions. And so it's my pleasure to introduce our guest tonight, Chris Lord. Welcome.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us. Why don't you talk to the audience a little bit about your background and why you're running for this office?
Okay. I'm Chris Lord. I am a stay-at-home mom of 4, grandmother of 1. Business background, left that when I was told that employees were nothing more than a number and that I was to treat them as such. It's not something I've ever believed. You want your employees to perform at a really good rate, and you do not treat them like they are common trash. You know, if you want them to behave, or not to behave, but if you want them to perform well enough and to make you look good as a boss, because let's face it, you know, your employees will make you or break you, then you treat them with respect and dignity. But since the company that I worked for refused to do that, I just didn't work for them anymore. You know, I have a very varied background. I do have some college degrees under my belt. And what I haven't went to college for, I have actually self-taught myself. Wide range of things, but I never really go into that just because it takes too much time. I mean, it's a lot. So I've never really, delved into that. Just kind of keep it on the hush-hush. Because I don't brag about myself. I think that just looks very bad upon a person when they brag a lot about themselves, so I don't do it. And the reason why I decided to get into politics was my granddaughter was born the day Trump was elected. I'm sitting there and I'm holding this precious little thing, and I think, what have we done? What have I done? Why did I slack off this long? I can't give her this country the way it is. I must change. So if I want to see the change, I must be the change. So I'm pretty much doing everything I can to be the change.
Great. That sounds great. Okay, so we're going to jump right into our first topic, which is the economy. Okay. So I'm going to read a little statement here, and then we'll get some questions. Okay. So the national unemployment rate is at a 17-year low of 4.1% for the 6th consecutive month in March. The stock market is at an all-time high. However, wages for most of us continue to be stagnant, and many of the jobs that have been added are either low-paying or temporary. According to the Kentucky Center for Economic Policy, the majority of job growth in Kentucky is in low-wage jobs. 8 of the 10 most common occupations in our state, according to job projections through 2024, pay less than $15 an hour on average, and 3 pay less than $10 an hour. Just 2 of these 10 occupations require an associate's degree or higher. In Kentucky, 76% of jobs are in occupations that have a median annual pay below 200% of the poverty level for a family of 4. Kentucky ranks 9th worst in the nation on that measure. How would you address the issue of working class people not getting ahead in this current environment of pro-corporations?
Well, for starters, I'm definitely going to remind corporations that it is a luxury for them to have a business in this country. I mean, there's no other way about it. They feel like this country is theirs for the taking, and as such, they're treating it as such. It needs to stop, and it needs to stop now. Yeah, they're going to fight, and they're going to fight like crazy because they don't want to be told, shape up or ship out. They don't want to be told that. But that's exactly what I'm going to tell them. They can either, start paying people what they're worth. Our production is so much more exponentially high compared to what it has been in the past, but yet people are not getting the money that they're worth.
Right.
So, there's several measures that I want to implement to get them to do what is appropriate for the employees.
And what would those be?
Well, for starters, I'm going to jack their tax rate up to 80%.
5%.
Yeah, it's going to be painful. But then I'm going to do, let's see, I don't remember if I put it in here or not. No, I don't think I did. There is a breakdown. No, I didn't. I left it at home. On my website, in my, there's a subset for the tax section. I do have the breakdowns of the tax breaks that I will give them. If they unionize, they'll get a 5% tax break.
Okay.
If they pay $15 an hour, they will get another 5%. If they pay upwards of $20 an hour, there'll be an additional 5%. So the incentive there is to pay higher because that'll be a 10% discount on their reduction on their taxes. Yes, they're still going to have their administrative tax breaks. I'm not going to take away the operating expenses. But, if they offer, a really robust 401k, they'll get a 3% tax break. They will have to prove that they pay equally if they want another 5% tax break. If they fail to do that, then they will not get that 5% tax break, but they will have to prove to me that they do.
So basically what you're saying is they would start out with this 80% tax rate, and then everything that they do that helps the workers, they could reduce their tax rate by a certain percentage.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's not just cut and dry what I have listed. It is still open for negotiation, and those were just the things that I came up with off the top of my head.
Got it. Okay. So what is your idea of a living wage?
Minimum of $15 an hour, but if we were to be more honest about it, it would actually be closer to the $22.50 an hour. Because, and there's several different studies out there that say what different, what we need at the max minimum wage for survivability, but it's, we've got some that say it's $20 an hour, we've got some that say it's $21 an hour, we've got some that say it's $24 an hour. But if we take the median in there, it's pretty close to $22.50.
Do you think that that would depend on the part of the country? I mean, California obviously has a very high cost of living, whereas Kentucky not as much. Do you think that it would be the same across the board everywhere, or should it be taken into? Should certain factors be taken into consideration?
Yeah, see, I think if we do that, I think we re-enter the whole classism. Just because you live in this state, you should get paid this much. Just because you live in this area, you should get paid this much. I have never really agreed with that type of thinking. It does leave the door open for way too much class-based cliques.
Because right now in certain states, that there are differences in minimum wages because it is more expensive to live in certain states. So, but you think that would not... So I guess what I'm saying is that certain states could increase. Like you're wanting a bare minimum across the board for everybody, and then if California wanted to,
they could go higher.
Could go higher.
Yeah,
so.
It's this. This is where I want the minimum to be at, but feel free because I am going to. I will implement the Jiminy Crickleberries. What's that called? Bevan took it out. Jiminy Crickleberries. Sure. I don't remember what it's called.
Okay, well we can come back to that. How do you think this will affect local small businesses if you implement this $22, even $15 an hour, $22.50 an hour? I mean, is that going to hurt the small businesses?
Oh, it would if I were to just flat out say, okay, you're closing this day, you're opening this day, this is where you're going to be at the next day. Prevailing wage.
Prevailing wage.
I knew I had the word, and I was like, it starts with a P, and I couldn't come up with it. I wanted to say predominant, but I knew that wasn't right. But no, it's a tiered system. Okay. So you're looking at the top businesses. We've got the mega corporations that are multi places that they're open, all the way down to local single owner businesses. My dad, his business pays, starting out $10 an hour. There's no way he could close shop one day and then open up the next day at $15 an hour for starting wages. There's no way because, main streets. Those are what? They're usually for tourists to come and shop at because the people that live there generally can't afford to shop there. But if you bring their wages up, they will have more disposable income and they can shop at these stores more often. Well, then the stores can actually start hiring more people, and as more people are spending, they can start increasing their wages. It's not just a wham bam thank you ma'am. We're looking at
a circle. It's almost like a circle,
Yeah, we're looking at starting here and then trickle down does actually work in some instances. Especially when you're looking at local economies and not the
big picture.
Right.
Okay. All right. Also, you've shown support for youth job programs, which include trade schools and high schools, and by making apprentice jobs more readily known. You've stated we should be proactively filling these jobs before we need to become reactive.
Yes.
How could the federal government support these programs, and how would they be paid for?
Well, like Trimble County, we do not have a apprenticeship program or vocational school.
Okay.
We currently bus our kids to Carrollton at Carroll County because the campus is actually bigger there. They already had everything set. Excuse me, because JCTC used to set on Carroll County High School's property. They've since moved and built another thing, but the thing was, is we could use their school cart.
Right.
So everything was already set there, so we send the
It's
kids
easier
over
to
there.
bus there.
Right.
Cheaper, probably.
Yeah, it is. But we do pay for that. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that instead of cutting the funding for our local schools, that we start paying what needs to be paid. We're still at like 12% less than what we were paying pre-2008.
Do you think that's from the federal government, or is that a state issue? How can the federal government help support these programs?
Honestly, if we were to actually start bringing in the tax income instead of cutting taxes and giving massive tax breaks to corporations, we could afford all this stuff. We really, really, really could.
Right.
And, that's just what a lot of people don't understand. They think giving tax breaks to the corporations is going to put money in their pocket, and it's not. 81% of the wealth generated last year went to the top 1% in this country. 81% of the wealth.
Right. And they don't always put it back in the economy.
They never put it back in the economy because they don't shop locally. You need people to shop locally in order to keep the money in your local area. That is how you grow your local area.
Right. Okay. What about displaced adults who want to learn a new trade? So we have, adults that have lost their job, the factories have closed, could be the coal miners. What types of things would you suggest for them?
Honestly, I'm not sure if anyone has had the pleasure of ever looking into the GI Bill that the federal government gives
The veterans.
militaries. We need to really start looking at allowing credit time for working adults to accrue credit hours, or not really credit hours, but you work and you earn enough time to go to this class for an entire semester. Spread it across multiple semesters. Give them not just like Pell Grants. Pell Grants will cover the majority of your technical college or your vocational schools, but they don't always cover a four-year university.
Right.
So we need to make sure that they've been working these low-paying jobs. They don't have money set aside to go to college. They really don't. So we need to make sure that we can let them know that, yes, we have this program for you. Here you go.
That sounds good. Okay. Recently, the dairy farmers in the state have come under dire circumstances with Walmart developing its own processing plant and subsequent contract with Dean Foods. What do you propose to do to help them, these local dairy farmers, if you're elected? Because there's these situations happen all the time.
Yes.
This isn't an isolated incident.
No, it's definitely not an isolated incident, but it is hitting locally really hard. Honestly, I've never really appreciated the way Walmart operates their business. Prior to Sam Walton retiring, Walmart was a really good company to work for. But we're talking about, the 80s to the early 90s. It was a good company. It's no longer a good company. His kids have control of it now, and they are just nickel and diming everybody. And they refuse to pay a decent enough wage. So, we need to make sure that there are stops in place that they cannot pull this kind of stunt again. Because what they have done is they've essentially told everyone that used to supply them, you're no longer good enough. We don't want you. Well, then where are they supposed to send their milk to?
Right.
Milk cannot be shipped that far. It really can't. So we have to make sure that we nip that kind of stuff in the bud.
Okay. So we're going to talk about tax reform. The Republican Tax Reform and Jobs Act of 2017 was supposed to simplify the tax laws and give a tax break to everyone. But the tax cuts were not aimed at helping the lower and middle classes. Instead, corporate tax rates were cut from 35% to 21%, and the wealthiest Americans will see the largest tax breaks.
Yes.
What changes would you propose to this newly adopted tax system?
Well, let's see, we've already touched on it a bit. We're definitely going to jack the corporate tax rate up to 80%. Now, keep in mind, though, when I say corporate tax rate, I'm talking like the big corporations. Everything will be tiered FDR did say, your tax liability should only be based upon what you can actually afford. Smaller businesses aren't going to be able to afford an 80% tax. It's going to basically hurt them seriously because their profit margins aren't that high right now. We need to increase their profit margins, but increase the tax rate back up to where it needs to be at. Give them incentives with the tax breaks to become more beneficial to people instead of just being so self-centered that they're only thinking about their bottom dollar.
Profits, right. What about for just average citizens? Any tax? Because we are getting a little tax cut, but it's the lowest. I'm waiting to see what's going to happen when we actually file our taxes next year. Right, that's when we're.
Well, our taxes actually went up this year.
So that's not what was supposed to happen.
No,
right?
it wasn't.
And so, what about for the lowest, low and middle classes? How would you do anything to reverse that, or what would you?
What would I do to make their tax burden a lot less?
Or do we need it to be less? How would you structure the tax code if you could, for not for corporations now, but for just average people, average working people?
Honestly, I believe wholeheartedly in what FDR said about your tax liability is only based upon whether you're capable of paying for it. Currently, the low income wages can't afford the taxes. Well, they really can't. So, we do need to look at removing the tax liability until they reach a certain point. And that the certain point needs to be calculated based upon, like cost of living in your local area. Wages go up. I expect to see, like rent and stuff go up because Seattle's dealing with a massive homeless boom right now just because landlords got greedy. Seattle's looking at reversing that right now. So when we do this, we need to make sure we have all that already covered. Put the caps in there so they can't incrementally jump that much, that fast.
Right.
But, same thing with the taxes. All the studies are already there. We don't need any more new studies. We just need to access the data that we already have to see where we need to actually start looking at to put the taxes in. But honestly, I'm not looking at anything below $50,000 be taxed. I really don't think so. We live at $67,000 roughly a year. Even that is difficult for us sometimes because, up until this year, I had 7 people in my house.
Wow.
It was tight. Money was really
Right.
tight. But, my eldest 2 and my granddaughter moved out, so it's made it a little bit nicer.
Right.
My grocery bill's not $400 a week.
Yeah, I can understand that. Right. Okay. Let's talk about the environment. Congress passes laws that help to protect the environment, such as the 1972 Clean Water Act. This gave the EPA the authority to implement pollution control programs, such as setting wastewater standards for industry. The current administration wants to roll back environmental protections because they claim these regulations stifle industrial growth. How will you ensure that the EPA is fully enforcing the environmental laws passed by Congress and not working for the coal and chemical industries?
Well, for starters, we need to remove Pruitt. And then we need to make sure that there are no others put back in his place.
And I think that, confirming these...
They're fast-tracking them. They're not even giving them a full confirmation hearing. It's ridiculous the way they're doing this. And it's just really, really sad.
It is.
That they're treating our country like it's up for the lowest bidder because they're not getting paid that much to sell these votes out. They're really not. When you look at the grand scheme of things versus what the corporations are going to be making, they're not getting a whole lot of money out of that. And it's pretty sad that they're selling us for that.
Well, if you can't get rid of Pruitt, because it seems like the president, I don't know if he seems to get rid of the cabinet heads, but
yes, very quickly.
And he's not getting rid of some of them that we want him to get rid of.
Yeah.
But how would it, in Congress, how would you work towards getting the EPA? Because it seems like the EPA right now, it's not protecting the environment. How would you get them to live up to what they're supposed to do?
Well, I would re-implement everything that Obama did, that Trump has executive ordered right back out. It's a lie to say that it's stifling economic industrial growth because it's not. These companies have already got all this stuff in place. Yeah, okay, it's probably hurting, smaller businesses to be able to get into the field. We do need to look at giving them, grants to help them or, cut their bill down some because how many business people do you know starting up have $2 million to drop right out of the hat?
Right.
I don't know anybody. So, I mean, we need to look at that because, yeah, I'm sure that does really impact, the smaller businesses getting to start out.
Right. That was my next question, so that's good.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's perfect. So we're going to move on to healthcare. You have stated there's a bill, H.R. 676, that has been floating for some time in the House of Representatives, but they refuse to allow it to be called for a vote. So this is the Medicare for All bill, right?
Yes.
Do you want to talk about that a little bit and why you support that bill and what you would do if you were elected to try to get that moving?
Well, we know that Ryan is not coming back. He's already said he's quitting, and Bryce, the Iron Stash, has already said that he will put forth the bill. There are multiple people running for the House and the Congress both who have all signed contracts stating that we will push for Medicare for All system or Medicaid for All system, whichever one you want to look at. So, I mean, I really don't think that we're going to have to worry too much about the H.R. 676 being left in the dust because I really think we're going to push and we're going to push hard. I've signed at least, 2 contracts stating that I will push for this. One gives me a 6 months window, one gives me a year window. So I don't have a choice. I feel very strongly about giving everyone health care and not just access to health care. That word annoys me. I want them to have health care, and I want them to be able to go to the doctor when they need it. And I want the mental health portion reinstated.
Right.
Because we need that.
So what about the Affordable Care Act then? Because that's what we currently have,
Yes.
right? And so if Medicare for All was implemented, would that sort of, take over the Affordable Care Act? How would you transition, I guess, from the Affordable Care Act into this Medicare for All?
Well, the ACA had it really nicely because they did put caps on the amount of profit.
Yeah.
Well, kind of sort of profit, but how much they could jack up the rates per year.
Right.
Since the ACA's inception, we've only went up like 2 to 3% a year. Previously, we were going up.
Premiums, is that what you mean?
Yeah, previously the premiums were going up. Prior to the ACA, they were going up anywhere from 6 to 9%. Now we're at 3 to 4%. So, that was definitely nice, but the ACA didn't go far enough in removing the for-profit health care. Because we really, really, really need to take that out, and I am very much about reminding them. HMOs have a 70% is all they turn back in from what they take in as far as premiums and co-pays and deductibles. They only pay 70% out. 30% of it goes straight to administrative. I'm sorry, but you don't need 30% to administrative. Medicare currently runs at a 3% overhead. Now, the 3% does bother me because it's been 3% for a very long time, which means stagnant wages.
Right.
We do need to increase that. I would honestly be fine with 8 to 10%, provided, they got paid well.
Right.
And we're guaranteed their retirement benefits, unlike some.
Right. The other thing with Medicare, I work in the healthcare field too, is that they not only are wages stagnant, but the amount of money that is given to the providers is stagnant as well, and it keeps getting cut back. And so the hospitals and doctors are asked to be, doing more and more and more, and they're getting paid less and less. And I think that that's going to be part of the benefit or the pro of getting all of this worked out. It will be. Because when Medicare does that, the for-profit insurance companies do the same thing. They start negotiating, like, well, Medicare only pays you this. So, how would you address constituents who say government shouldn't be involved in healthcare? Because there's people that are saying, including our current representative, who say that government should even be involved in healthcare. And you may have to talk to some of those people and try to win them over.
Well, our country was founded on we the people, by the people, for the people. Not we the lobbyists, by the super PACs, for the corporations. Right. So, government should be working for us, not for the top 1%. We make the bulk of this country. We do make the bulk of this country. And as such, the government needs to be taking care of us, especially considering we pay out so much. And it's truly just time. Right now, my dad is looking at a really serious health scare. And the HMO is saying, no, thank you, even though the preventative care would save, possibly him not losing his life if we could get it taken care of now.
Right, right.
And the Medicare for All system would give the power back to the doctors to make the decision, not the death panels in the HMOs.
Right, right, absolutely. How would you, we may have touched on this a little bit, how would you reward companies who provide full-time positions with quality healthcare benefits? So, because some companies will try to avoid, having to give health benefits because they'll only hire part-time, or they'll be temporary workers.
Or they'll do 30 hours.
Just below the full-time. So how would
Even
you
though the
reward them?
ACA said 30 hours, they qualified for it, now they're only hiring them for 27 to 29 hours a week.
Yeah. How would you reward companies that do provide full-time positions, and offer these health care benefits?
Another tax.
That's what you had talked about earlier. So, and hopefully in the meantime, because there would be a transition period.
Yes.
If we did do Medicare for all, that's not going to happen overnight. It could
No,
take
it's not.
years.
It could take years
to get there.
Because the pharmacy groups are going to be fighting us tooth and nail. The HMOs are going to be fighting us tooth and nail. And then, of course, you've got all the lobbyists. They're going to be so raging mad. Feed me your tears.
Okay, so energy. You have stated, if we wanted to be thought of as a leader of the world, we must become a world leader in tackling climate change. The energy sectors that are seeing the rapid growth in our country are the renewable energy sectors.
Yes.
The current administration in Washington is not on board with renewable energy and fully embraces the expansion of the fossil fuel industry. What
Yes, they do.
specific ideas do you have to reverse the direction the current administration is headed with regards to energy?
Well, we're going to remove the 30% tariff they slapped on the solar panel imports. Give California a high five for their latest. You build a new house, you have to put solar panels on it. Let's give them a big high five for that one.
That's awesome.
I really did appreciate that. That was so awesome.
Right.
And we really, 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 really need to stop giving oil companies and coal companies and there's another one too. I don't remember. But they get massive tax breaks and they get money every year in the form of, more tax breaks and more less liability and everything. We need to cut those out. If they want to be the premier, then they can start paying for their way.
So what specific policies would you introduce in Congress to support the clean energy sector, and how can more homeowners afford clean energy? So we were having this, tax breaks for homeowners or different ideas.
Yes.
How would you, when you're in Congress, kind of support that industry again?
Honestly, I liked the tax breaks, especially if you were doing, used to be if you replaced your windows with Energy Stars, you got, tax breaks on that. It wasn't everything that you paid out, but you did get a percentage back. Plus, your standard monthly electrical bill was going to go down because your windows weren't leaking anymore. More energy efficient central air and heat pumps. We need to make sure we bring that back too, because that's been done away with. Your electric company will give you a rebate for that, but not a whole lot. When we were looking at replacing our central air heat pump system, which was going to cost us like $12,500, we were going to go the larger one because it was going to give us, a break on our electric bill. They were going to give us a discount because of it.
So do you support the process where if you have more energy, if your house is producing more energy than you can use, you get to sell it back to the electric company? I know that some of the companies are not. They don't want to do that.
They want your energy for free and they don't want to give you the money for it, but they still want to charge you for when you're not producing any energy and you're actually pulling from the grid. They want to charge you for that, but they don't want to give you the money for what you're putting into the grid. Right. I want to make that actually illegal.
Okay.
I really do. Now, as to whether or not I can do it, I don't know, but it would definitely be something I would want to look into, because the energy cooperatives are a little different. But yeah, I would definitely make sure that was re-implemented and make it so that it was heavily frowned upon if I could not make it illegal. Heavily frowned upon for them to be so greedy.
Some argue that it's too late to bring the solar industry to Kentucky as a permanent source of jobs and boost the economy because we waited so long to attempt the transition. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's going to be slow and it's going to be painful. But I think if we knuckle down and we let the companies do what they want to do as far as, because there's that.
The energy company, the clean energy companies.
Yes, there's currently a solar farm, or not solar farm, but a solar panel company in Louisville, I believe that is. They're currently getting hammered because of the increased taxes and the tariffs. Yes. But see, they don't get the tax breaks that, the coal
Companies do, probably.
Right. So we need to definitely make sure that we start looking into that instead.
So how would you reconcile with the coal miners here? I mean, that was a big rallying cry in this last election for Kentucky was the coal jobs.
Yes.
How would you kind of tie that in with the clean energy? I mean, we don't want, more people to become unemployed, but we want to move towards clean energy.
Yes.
So.
We currently have clean coal is selling for $45 a ton. $45 a ton. A person cannot pull that out in an hour by themselves. It's machine only. So no, I don't want to see them having to go work for pennies on the dollar. I would much rather see them, because they have acquired quite a lot of knowledge. We could transfer that into multiple other fields. How many of the guys have worked on the mining machines? It's, you work on this large of a machinery, you can work on pretty much anything. Would you like to go to be an automotive mechanic? Do you want to go work on diesels?
So you're
there
talking
are
about
jobs.
job retraining?
Yes, and they wouldn't have to pay for that out of their own pocket. That would be something that they would be given because their job field is no longer there. So yes, it would be something that I would very, very much like to see happen.
Okay. And then we're talking about tax breaks for purchasing solar panels and things like that. But the way that the new tax code is, we don't get to itemize things now. You either take the standard deduction or you. So how can if that's not repealed or modified, these tax breaks for individuals, they may not. We're not going to be able to have those anymore because of the way that the new tax code is. So, are there other ways that we could encourage people to be able to start, moving towards clean energy? That tax breaks may not be an option.
Well, honestly, if the tax breaks, we can't get the tax code repealed or rewritten. Honestly, it would probably be a case of going to the cooperatives and, be like, here, I need the people that are using green energy. This is what they're going to be getting. And go that route, because you wouldn't be able to file your taxes and take that deduction any longer.
Right.
So it would just have to be simply just search and find them and give them their money that way. Unless we send it through the cooperatives, but I could just imagine the paperwork.
Yeah. No more paperwork.
No more paperwork.
Okay, the U.S. has the longest railway system in the world, but it's arguably in the worst condition. How do you propose generating the funds necessary to bring us up to date with the likes of China on something like this?
Oh, I know. China's rail system. I'm honestly, I'm jealous. I'm jealous of.
Even in Europe, they have these, trains that you can take from country to country.
On time. They're not late. They run like clockwork. The amount of, public transit when I was in Scotland, even in just the small, tiny little boroughs, 4 or 5 houses. Guess what? There was a bus stop. I was like, really?
Right.
4 houses and there's a bus stop.
So convenient for everybody.
It was, because that's what they did. They hit the cities and then they would come hit the outskirts. Now, granted, the outskirts weren't run like all the time. You would catch it in the morning, and then catch it in the evening, come back home. So, but yeah, I was quite jealous, to be truthful, because it was really nice and it was clockwork.
So how do we, maybe move more towards this, a better public transportation system?
We need to spend the money on the infrastructure. Everything is crumbling in this country because it's been so business orientated and corporation orientated that they have just let everything else fall to the wayside. Corporations don't want to move into an area where the underlying road structure can't handle their delivery trucks. They don't want to move there.
Right.
So, you need to spend the money on the substructure of the roads to get their trucks in there, and then hope they'll stay.
Right. So moving on to immigration, I know I have a question here. You talked about it extensively on your website, about the bridges that are crumbling. Like, we have our bridge here, the Brent Spence Bridge that goes across the Ohio River that, thousands and thousands of people drive across. What are your specific ideas for repairing the nation's infrastructure, and how will we pay for it? Because the current administration wants to privatize a lot of this. The bridges, the toll, we're going to have toll roads and toll bridges, but what about all the water? Like Martin County, they don't have clean water because they need to replace all their pipes. How do we pay for this?
Because the county people embezzled all the money. that fallout has been huge from that. It really has been.
Right. But, that's just one example.
Yeah, that's just one example. There are areas in Trumbull County that still do not have running water. They're well water.
Yeah.
You got a hand pump.
Right.
Outhouse.
Yeah. It's not the city water, right? Either you've got well water or you've got city water.
Yeah.
So how do we pay for it if we're not, going to charge people tolls?
Honestly, the money is there. It's just being spent elsewhere. We spend, $776 billion a year on our military, and it goes to Lockheed, it goes to the ammunition companies, it goes to the tank manufacturers. It does not come down to the bottom.
To the soldiers, even.
Exactly. So, if they're going to spend all that kind of money at the top, then I don't really think they deserve it. I really don't. We have an entire graveyard out in Arizona. It's just collecting the sand dust.
What?
It's military. We've got jets, we've got bombers, we've got tanks, we've got Humvees.
So they just keep making more. They just keep contracting more because they want to support these companies. It sounds
exactly. And it's just out there gathering dust. And most of that stuff was never even drove. They didn't fly it. They didn't drive it. It was literally hauled out there on a flatbed, dropped off, and that was all she wrote. And it's just sitting there gathering dust. And it's like hundreds of billions of dollars sitting there. So, no, we don't need to keep doing that.
So you're suggesting that we should cut back on military spending where there's obviously overspending.
Yes, where the overspending is occurring.
And use some of that money to rebuild our infrastructure.
Yeah, the Army Corps of Engineers, they employ quite a lot of the military. They can help us get started.
So foreign policy. Since Trump took office in January of 2017, the U.S. military presence and activity in Yemen and Somalia have greatly increased, largely under the radar of average citizens. We don't hear about this, right? U.S. troops died last year in both conflicts, yet he didn't mention either of this in his State of the Union address. There was a 140% increase in spending on our activities in Yemen, and we have more than doubled the number of troops in U.S. airstrikes in Somalia while adding 2 new military headquarters there. Why are we involved in these conflicts? And there's other conflicts like this around the world. That what should our national role in these matters be, and how can Congress kind of do what they're supposed to do and oversee? It doesn't seem like they're
not overseeing anything,
doing much.
It's incredibly tiresome. I really don't like it because to me it feels like they're just wanting to destabilize to go in and take natural resources. That is honestly all I feel like they're trying to do. These countries that they're currently invading now, the Middle Eastern countries, they have large amounts of oil reserves. They have large amounts of iron and, precious metals to be mined. If we're not there for, an actual act of war, and, why are we there putting our nose in where we don't belong?
So what do you think about Syria then? They are obviously in the middle of a civil war, and we keep, kind of doing stuff, and then we stop. Should we go all in or back away, or do you agree with what we're doing now?
Honestly, I don't know. I'm honestly up in the air about that one because I keep hearing conflicting reports. First they said Assad poisoned his people. Then they said, no, he didn't. Russia did it. Now they said, well, we can't even pinpoint Russia did it, but we know Assad didn't do it. It's like, so which one is it,
I feel like we don't get all the information. You as a congressperson probably would.
Probably get more of it, yes. But it has the feeling of what we went through with the weapons of mass destruction and,
how we found out that was wrong,
in the Bush era.
Yeah,
he lied about it to get that. Because what? He wanted the oil.
Sounds like there's some work to do there.
Yes.
Foreign policy. Okay. We're going to talk about the Second Amendment. Okay, this is a hot topic right now. I don't know if you're a gun owner or not, but what are your thoughts on, stricter gun ownership laws and people who say, why would you punish law-abiding, responsible gun owners with more restrictions if that's what you support? What would you say to that? So first of all, do you support increased background checks, and would that be a national policy versus it seems like right now it's just state by state by state, and there's certain states that are strict, and then there's some that are very lax, and then people take those across state lines and things like that. So do you support increased background checks at a national level?
Yes. I'm very much for a TWIC background check. That's Transportation Workers Identification Credentials. You only have to do that every 2 years. It's not an every time you go kind of thing.
Every time you purchase a gun, you wouldn't have to.
No, you would have, 2-year clarification approval. You wouldn't have to do it again. So I do believe in an enhanced background check, because currently the reason why the kid in Parkland managed to get his hands on an AR-15 was because what? That's right, Florida's
very lax.
Florida state constitution says they don't have to deal with the NCS database. Their state's constitution says no. So they can't, so the federal government can't force them to do it. But TWIC, they don't have a choice.
What is TWIC?
It's a Transportation Workers Identification
Credential.
Credential.
Said that, okay.
Yeah.
And that's a database.
No, C.
And that's a database where...
That is a huge database. Everybody that works in port of calls, that's shipping ports, you enter into fuel dispensaries, that's where the gas goes to be delivered to gas stations. You drive the fuel tankers to deliver the gas to the gas stations, you have to have a TWIC card.
Got it.
Yeah, it's actually quite involved. No-fly list, the terror watch list, it pulls up police records, and it doesn't matter how old that is, it's still going to get pulled up. So, yeah, I mean, they're very strict about it because, let's put it this way, they have jet fuel on those.
Right.
On those places. And that stuff is highly flammable.
Right.
But this was implemented after 9/11.
Okay. So why would you say every 2 years? That seems like what would happen, like say there was a domestic violence incident, and now you're able to still go buy guns because nobody's checking this background.
The way I understand it, they still keep an eye on you. You're in the database. If something crops up,
it would give an alert to say.
It automatically gives an alert to the TWIC.
Okay.
At least that's what I've understood as far as what I was able to read of it, because my husband has a TWIC card.
Got it. Okay. Let's move on to education. Public education seems to be under attack these days. Public schools are underfunded, and the Secretary of Education is pro-charter and private schools. We continue to say that we want our children to have the best education in the world and expect them to have the highest test scores, but we don't provide enough funding for this to be possible. When this happens, we can't recruit and retain good teachers. And Thomas Massey has introduced a bill that would eliminate the Department of Education because he feels that each state should be in control of how they educate their students. What specifically would you do to support public education in the United States at the federal level?
Take out Common Core, except for Common Core math. I really do like the fact that they were starting to teach the algebra and physics computation processes as early as they were, because you teach it to them younger, it's easier for them to understand. But as far as the language arts in Common Core, it was ridiculous. Most of them cannot read past a 3rd grade level. So that definitely needs to go away. History, Common Core history, we're going to go back to what it was originally. Slavery is relegated to like 2 chapters in a book. Like, really? 2 chapters? But then we need to take away the teach for the tests, because the amount of testing that they're doing is only doing one thing, and that's filling the pockets of the test makers. It's not doing anything. It's not teaching our children anything, and the teachers spend so much time teaching to these tests that they're not actually able to educate our children the way they feel most comfortable in teaching. Kids have an innate desire to learn, and if we would let the teachers go back to doing it that way, the way they know how to teach, we could get the kids engaged more. We could get them to learn more, because prior to Common Core and all the testing coming in, we were so much better in education. But now, since all that started, we're slowly Very rapidly. Dropping in the ranks. We're quite low on the education totem pole now.
Right.
So we need to give the power back to the teachers.
Do you think that's at a state level, or can it still be a federal?
Honestly, I want to do it at the federal level and get Common Core out. I really do like the Common Core math, though.
That's the one that we had to learn all over, right? If
Yeah.
if you know what I'm talking about,
Yeah,
it's
honestly,
different.
once I realized what they were doing, it made a whole lot of sense.
Right, it does. It's just different.
Yeah, and getting what they're trying to get at, then once you finally figure it out, you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
What about this charter schools and the private schools that the Secretary of Education is really trying to push? I mean, that takes away money from
Oh, yes, I know it takes
public
away.
education.
It does.
So how do we provide enough funding for our public education?
No longer give charter schools any money. You know, if they want to, be for-profit education, well, guess what? They can make their own profit. They don't get tax money for that. Charter schools do not want to teach children who are not at this specific level. They refuse anyone that's not here.
right.
If you are above that, but you still have bad traits that they don't want, a lot of kids with the higher IQs, they have behavioral issues, anxiety issues, that kind of stuff. They don't want those kids.
Right.
And they definitely will not teach children who are on the autistic spectrum. Any child that is disabled, they will not teach them either, even though it has been made law in this country that every child is due an education.
Right.
It's actually a law in this country now.
Okay, we're going to skip over to. Could you talk a little bit about? You talk about the money pyramid of education. We've got kids graduating from college, $40,000 in debt or more. How can the federal government support students trying to get a higher education without being saddled with this massive debt? And do you have specific programs that help alleviate this financial burden?
Well, honestly, I think, and I didn't get to answer this question when I had the debate in Campbell County because I only had 30 seconds. I didn't realize we were only at 30 seconds, so when I started my explanation, it cut off. But, okay, I borrowed $5,500 for when I went to college. My Stafford loan ballooned to almost $28,000 just from the interest rate alone. So I want to take the interest rate, I want to do away with it, and I want to take all the interest that is accrued and make it disappear. What you have paid in interest, I want that applied to your principal.
Right.
So that we can, because right now the student debt is just crushing our kids. They can't get ahead with it. So we do need to make sure that they're taking on this debt to go to college to do something. We need to make sure that it is doable,
right,
and not crushing debt.
Right. Okay. The president. We're going to move on to immigration. The president continuously says that Democrats are weak on borders and want illegal immigrants to pour into the country, in effect, having open borders. He also wants $25 billion for a border wall, which he thinks will stop illegal immigration. What specifically do you think we need to do, if anything, to address illegal immigration? Is the current system working? If not, what needs to be fixed?
That one's actually quite robust.
I know it's a big topic.
Yeah, the $25 billion for the border wall. Yeah, no thanks. At least 90% of the overstaying immigrants fly in. A border wall's not going to do anything. I'm sorry, but it's not going to do a bit of good. Okay. We currently have a wall on every single foot that we can possibly put at the border, except for the national reserves and the wildlife protection areas that we need to make sure. And we cannot put it across the Rio Grande. Sorry, but we can't. It's actually against the treaty between us and Mexico, so we can't. But no, we're not weak on immigration. We just look at it differently. These people are here. They're paying lots and lots of money into our tax system. They put in, I forgot what the figure.
Economy even.
Yes, they are so beneficial to our country. It's mind-boggling that people are screaming to throw them out on their ears. But they've put, I don't know what, $10 billion into Social Security or more, or is it $100 million? I don't. In the last decade, they've put a lot of money into our Social Security system, and they're not eligible to draw it because they do not have a Social Security number. They have a TIN, which is a taxpayer identification number. They can file taxes. They can work with that number. They don't get to take tax breaks. They don't get the tax refunds like we do. Everything they pay out in taxes is kept. So they do put a lot of money into our economy.
So it sounds like there's a lot of misinformation.
Yes, and we do need to fix the cost that it costs to get a green card. We do need to look, currently if you do not have a sponsor, you cannot file for a green card. Yeah, I know, I'm trying to speed it along.
That's fine.
But currently you need a sponsor in order to get a green card. The people that have been here undocumented for decades, they don't have anyone.
Right.
They can sponsor them unless their kids are old enough. And then they're terrified of filing the paperwork because it will get rejected multiple times unless you pay for an immigration attorney.
Right.
And the immigration attorneys will cost you thousands of dollars in addition to your filing fee. And, we need to make it so that, if they've been here for X amount of years and they've worked and they have all this stuff that they can prove that they are being beneficial and they're being helpful, we should bypass the whole you need a sponsor. We really should, because they've already proven themselves to be highly beneficial to our country. And we need to let them know that, and we need to make amends for that.
Yep. Okay, so we have an online question.
Okay.
It says, on his Facebook page, Thomas Massey's fans write about how he defends their liberty, defends the Constitution. Let's see here. Bypass the FDA for meat production. No bill to fix NICS. Anything goes for guns. Can you speak to your essential policy difference, your different philosophy from Thomas Massey?
Well, honestly, he calls himself a constitutionalist, but I don't really think he even is capable of saying it like that. He degraded and ridiculed President Obama for the entire time President Obama was in office, saying the man didn't know anything. Obama was a constitutional lawyer. He was a constitutional scholar.
I know.
Seriously.
It's funny.
So, yeah. It just annoyed me to no end. What Thomas Massey seems to think about the Constitution is not actually what has been made case law in this country. It is the exact opposite of what he is saying. So, yeah, there is a large discrepancy between what he thinks and what is actual truth and fact, not hyperbole and lies like he likes to live in.
Okay, so we're moving on to miscellaneous questions now. What would be your number one priority if elected to Congress? What was your driving topic that you would just go after first?
Honestly, there's several. Because Medicare for all is extremely important to me. I want full health care. I don't want people to have to file bankruptcy anymore because they were unlucky and got cancer.
Right.
They're being refused surgeries that they need, and it's killing them. To me, that's extremely important. But so is raising minimum wage. So is the infrastructure. So is the green energy. It's very difficult to pinpoint just one thing.
Yeah.
I have spent some time writing up bills, and trust me, they're probably not going to pass muster the way I wrote them. They will have to go to the bill writers to be fixed. But I have spent some time writing bills, and they all delve with everything that is in, all my contracts that I have signed. I don't know if anyone has ever seen all them.
Are they on your webpage? On your website?
They're not on my website. I have not made a picture account to upload these things to, but they are scanned on my Facebook.
Okay.
In the picture section. I think the only one I don't think I have up there is the U.S. term limits. I do have term limits, by the way. And the 28th Amendment, which is overturning Citizens United. Because, see, that's another one that I'm big for.
Yeah.
We need to take the pay to win out of
government.
Yeah, period. It's just no question about it. But there is just so many things, and I only have 6 months on this one contract to get things done, to at least get them submitted. The contract for American Renewal, I only have 6 months. If I fail to do this in 6 months, I have to resign.
Oh, wow.
Yes, these contracts were very explicit. Candidates with a contract, I have 1 year. If I fail to submit the bills that I say I'm going to do, or do what I say I'm going to do, I have to resign.
Wow.
In a year. These are dead serious.
Right.
And then my the term limits doesn't have anything. It's just a pledge that I say to you. But then, like the American Promise, if I fail to do what I said I'm going to do in putting forth overturning Citizens United, whoever has donated money to my campaign can sue me.
Wow.
For loss of money and breach of contract.
Okay, you're serious.
Yes, I am dead serious about this.
Okay. All right. Do you do you believe that medical marijuana should be made legal at the federal level? Because right now we've got an attorney general who, is pretty much anti-marijuana, but, we're basically leaving it up to the states at this point, but it seems like more and more states want to go to this.
Or the Justice Department actually has the ability to decide yea or nay per state. They leave it up to the state attorney general whether they want to prosecute or not prosecute specific crimes. It's not. It's held at the federal level, but the states have, they don't have to just lockstep right behind the federal government. They have a little bit of leeway with it. So, they can charge, or, they can put them in prison longer, or they can give them a reduced sentence. It's really the state attorney's decision on that one. But no, I believe in medical marijuana. It does help remove people from the opioid crisis. Opioid. I always mispronounce that word. I hate that word. Oh, it's horrible. And then, harder drugs. Because if you make, legalized marijuana, we could take all this stuff off. Most of the people that use drugs are actually self-medicating mental illnesses, which ties into what? Oh, Medicare for all.
Right. It's all connected, right?
Yes, it's all connected, and it's all quite interlinking as far as I'm concerned. You can't tweak one little thing without tweaking a whole bunch of other things. So when I was coming up with my platform, I tried to find things that were all interlinking as much as possible and cover all the bases for it. So, I believe in medical marijuana. I believe in recreational marijuana, and also believe in hemp. We can use hemp as an alternative crop because you do have to crop rotate every so often. You can't plant like corn, 15 years consecutively. You're going to destroy the ground. Right. So you have to alternate your crops out. So we can throw the hemp into it as another rotational crop. But I have not looked in to see how destructive that is to the soil. So you would have to base whether or not you could rotate with that based upon what it leaches out of the soil versus what other crops put back. Right. That kind of thing. But yeah, I believe, and then of course coming with that comes with what? We're going to revamp the justice system.
Right. That's
which is important. A whole nother.
I know, that's a whole other topic that we didn't get to, but hopefully another time.
But it's important to me as well because we need to change all this. It is just ridiculous. The for-profit prisons are, treating people like they're chattel.
Right. And they just want to keep them coming.
Yes, and when you want to make profit, that's what you do. Right. You keep feeding the mill.
Right. Absolutely. Okay, that's all the questions. So
how did we do on time?
We're doing great on time. And so if you want to just, the last couple minutes here, talk back to our audience again and just tell them why they should vote for you. Coming up on May 22nd.
He's laughing at me. Okay, well, honestly, how to explain this very quickly?
You got a couple minutes.
Minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm very much for fixing things that are wrong with this country. I mean it when I say if you want to see the change, you must be the change. I heard that decades ago, and it never really clicked until I started all this. I want to see the change happen, and I will be the change. I will not stop. So, good luck.
Good luck to you, right?
Now it's good luck to getting me to stop.
Right.
Because, I'm quite headstrong when I want to be. So, quite tenacious as well, and I don't stop easily. So, honestly, I'm trying to do this for the better of everyone and not just myself. There are many, many, many things that even just little tweaks could have far-reaching ramifications to better our lives, but I don't want to go just a little bit. I'm aiming big. That's like way out there as far as everything that I want to do. So, yeah. Take a look at my Facebook. My Facebook has my entire platform. It's not just the 3 pages that I originally started with. I'm up to, 4 or 5, something like that. It's listed in 2 different places on my website as well. That is Lord for Congress, and then Facebook is the same, Lord for Congress. I am available to answer questions. You do not have to speak to anyone in my campaign. That is me you speak to. So please don't panic if I don't get to you right away. I'm a little busy sometimes. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Great. Well, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
And thanks everybody for watching. If you want to see this broadcast again, please go to our Facebook and YouTube channels and you'll be able to view it again and then join us next time for our next candidate next Sunday. Thanks everybody. Have a good night.